The Galactic Tribunal hovered in a silent orbit above a fractured world, its silver walls reflecting distant stars like shards of broken glass. Billions of alien eyes watched from fleets suspended in the void, their breath collectively held. Chains clinked as Ethan Ward said, "This is how you judge an entire species?" The towering alien judge, Richard's voice cut through the air, colder than any vacuum as he said, "Silence, human, your kind has forfeited the right to speak." The chamber trembled with restrained fury, its gravity fields flickering under the weight of the verdict. Ethan's knees hit the obsidian floor, dust scattering like dying sparks, but his gaze burned with quiet fire. The collaborator Daniel Hayes smirked from the sidelines, his polished uniform a gleaming betrayal. The silent ally Lyra Vey shifted slightly, her luminous eyes narrowing in subtle defiance. Outside, the fleets repositioned, forming a ring of inevitability around the tribunal station. Somewhere in the shadows, a whisper slithered into Ethan's ear, softer than breath yet sharper than any blade. "They're not just judging you. They're judging us all." The universe seemed to inhale, awaiting the sound of a single heartbeat to break eternity's pause. The tribunal's echoes faded into an oppressive quiet that pressed against every surface of the chamber. Ethan Ward stood shakily, wrists still bound, and his breath rasped in the thin recycled air. The silver-scaled alien judge Richard shifted slightly, the faint movement enough to make the surrounding fleets tighten formation. Daniel Hayes lingered at the edge of the dais, his smirk replaced by a calculating stare, as if measuring Ethan's breaking point. Lyra Vey's luminous skin dimmed for a heartbeat, her sorrowful gaze lingering on the chains biting into Ethan's flesh. Outside the dome, the fractured planet rotated slowly, its scars from ancient wars glinting under distant starlight. The narrator's voice described how silence became a weapon sharper than any blade, a suffocating verdict in itself. Ethan's chest tightened, yet his eyes lifted to meet Richard's towering gaze. "You can strip our dignity," Ethan Ward said through clenched teeth, "but you can't erase what we are." The whisper returned, unseen, unclaimed, sliding through the darkness like smoke. "Survive, and the galaxy will remember." The chamber's energy fields flickered, sending a faint shimmer across the alien walls, like lightning trapped in crystal. Ethan Ward's heartbeat echoed in his ears as Richard's deep voice reverberated, an unyielding storm of authority. Daniel Hayes shifted, his polished boots clicking against the cold floor while his calculating gaze weighed every trembling breath Ethan took. Lyra Vey's fingers twitched almost imperceptibly, a sign of dissent hidden beneath grace. Outside the dome, the fractured planet rolled on, scars catching the light of distant suns, a reminder of civilizations crushed beneath history's weight. The narrator described how silence turned to tension, thick and dangerous, a coil ready to snap. Ethan's chains rattled as he forced himself upright again. "Your evidence is forged," Ethan Ward said, his voice shaking but sharp. Richard's luminous silver scales flared briefly as he replied, "Your species forged its own destruction." The whisper slithered back through the air. "Truth lies deeper than their lies. Hold fast." The tribunal's floor vibrated as fleets outside adjusted their formation, a cosmic drumbeat of impending judgment. Ethan Ward's breath quickened, yet his gaze held steady on Richard's towering figure. Daniel Hayes glanced at Lyra Vey, suspicion flickering across his face as if sensing her unspoken defiance. Lyra Vey's luminous skin pulsed faintly, her sorrow giving way to a spark of quiet resolve. The narrator spoke of how even in the darkest chambers of power, resistance could germinate like a seed beneath stone. Richard's silver scales gleamed, and his voice cut through the silence like steel. "Humanity's sins cannot be undone." Ethan Ward tightened his fists until the chains groaned. "Then judge us for our hope," Ethan said, his words small but piercing. Outside, the fractured planet's surface caught a shaft of distant light, casting the tribunal in sharp, cold relief. The whisper, sly and urgent, lingered again. "The cracks are showing." The silence stretched until it felt alive, a presence slithering between every heartbeat. Ethan Ward stood taller, chains dragging with a metallic hiss across the cold floor. Richard's shadow loomed enormous, a monument of judgment. Daniel Hayes moved closer, his polished uniform gleaming, lips curling as if tasting inevitable victory. Lyra Vay's sorrowful gaze hardened as her luminous skin dimmed and brightened, betraying her inner turmoil. The narrator described the tribunal as a theater of fear, where even the stars outside seemed to dim. Ethan's voice cracked but did not falter. "You fear us because we endure." Richard's silver scales flared, and his tone sharpened like a blade. "We silence what threatens the galaxy." Outside, the fractured planet spun, its wounds glowing faintly beneath alien fleets poised to strike. The Whisperer's voice brushed Ethan's ear, colder now. "Survive the night, and the truth will follow." The tribunal chamber's lights dimmed to a pale glow as the fleets outside adjusted positions, casting moving shadows across alien steel. Ethan Ward stood chained, his breath shallow, haunted by echoes of his past. The narrator described memories bleeding through. His family's laughter, their screams drowned in war's fire, and the comrades who abandoned him when hope seemed lost. Judge Richard's towering figure moved like a planet in orbit, every motion deliberate and oppressive. Daniel Hayes observed silently, eyes glinting with cold calculation, already imagining a future without resistance. Lyra Vay's gaze softened, a fleeting compassion she dared not voice. Outside, the fractured planet turned slowly beneath alien ships that gleamed like knives under starlight. Silence thickened, crushing Ethan's chest, until his voice cracked through it. "We are more than the mistakes you parade." The whisper returned from the shadows, sharper now. "They fear what you carry, endurance they cannot destroy." The chamber's cold air carried whispers of forgotten battles, as Ethan Ward's mind drifted to fractured memories of ruined cities. Judge Richard's voice shattered the stillness like a meteor strike. "Your kind burns worlds without remorse." Ethan's jaw tightened, though his chains trembled against the floor. Daniel Hayes stepped closer, his polished boots gleaming, lips parting in quiet disdain. Lyra Vay's luminous skin pulsed faintly, a signal of hidden doubt flickering like a distant star. Outside the dome, alien fleets adjusted formation, their lights flashing like judgmental eyes. The narrator spoke of Ethan's heart pounding against despair, each beat an act of rebellion. He lifted his gaze, meeting Richard's towering stare. "You fear what you cannot control," Ethan said, his voice low but steady. The whisper in the darkness returned, urging him onward. "Hold fast, their fear is your weapon." The tribunal's energy fields hummed, a low vibration that crawled up Ethan Ward's spine like a warning. Judge Richard's silver scales reflected the fractured starlight, his gaze unblinking, as if weighing eternity against a single man's soul. Daniel Hayes folded his arms, his polished uniform catching the dim light, a predator savoring the hunt. Lyra Vay's luminous skin dimmed slightly, her sorrow deepening as she traced the cold floor with her eyes. The narrator described Ethan's memories flooding back. The sound of collapsing cities, the betrayal of once trusted allies, and the moment he realized survival meant sacrifice. Outside, fleets shifted positions, their silhouettes slicing across the stars like blades. Ethan's lips parted, his voice a thin thread of defiance. "The galaxy has seen cruelty, but it has also seen mercy." Richard's reply cut sharp, "Your species offered neither." The whisper threaded the silence once more. "Endure." The cracks widened. The chamber's silence pressed inward, heavy as a collapsing star. Ethan Ward's chest rose and fell, each breath a quiet rebellion against despair. Judge Richard's immense form shifted, silver-scaled robes whispering across the floor. Daniel Hayes leaned slightly forward, his calculating gaze fixed on Ethan like a predator savoring inevitability. Lyra Vay's luminous skin brightened faintly, a flicker of courage breaking through sorrow. The narrator spoke of how Ethan's memories sharpened. A child's laughter before the war, a sky once full of hope, now a battlefield of stars. Outside, fleets tightened formation, their lights flickering like distant storms. Ethan's voice steadied as he spoke. "You fear what might rise from the ashes." Richard's tone hardened, final and cold. "We erase threats before they bloom." The whisper hissed softly. "Their fear is your shield. Make them see." The air in the tribunal trembled, vibrating with the weight of unspoken histories. Ethan Ward's chains clinked as he took a deliberate step forward, the sound echoing like distant thunder. Judge Richard loomed, silver scales catching the light of countless stars, his authority radiating like gravity itself. Daniel Hayes' smirk returned, sharp and bitter, as if savoring Ethan's struggle. Lyra Vay's luminous lavender skin glowed softly, her sorrow now tempered with silent resolve. The narrator described how, even surrounded by enemies, endurance could spark rebellion. Outside the dome, fleets pivoted in synchrony, their movements casting shadows that danced across the chamber walls. Ethan's voice carried, quiet but unbroken. "We are flawed, but we are alive." Richard's reply was a low rumble. "Alive for now." The whisper, colder than ever, coiled around the words. "The galaxy begins to doubt." The tribunal chamber darkened as holographic evidence flickered to life, casting ghostly images of humanity's wars across the curved walls. Ethan Ward's pulse quickened, each image twisting truth into accusation. Judge Richard's towering frame loomed, silver scales shimmering like forged blades beneath starlight. Daniel Hayes shifted, his calculating eyes scanning the audience, feeding their outrage. Lyra Vay's luminous glow dimmed, sorrow deepening as she recognized distortions within the projected crimes. Outside, alien fleets realigned, their lights forming a silent jury. The narrator described the weight of the moment as a coil of injustice tightening around Ethan Ward's chest. He stepped forward despite his chains scraping the floor. "You choose the darkest of our stories," Ethan Ward said steadily, "but you ignore our courage." Judge Richard's voice thundered back. "Courage does not cleanse blood." The whisper returned, slicing through tension. "Truth is buried, unearthed." The holograms shifted, replaying distorted scenes of ancient conflicts where humans appeared as monsters. Ethan Ward's breath steadied as he recognized manipulated moments twisted for effect. Judge Richard stepped closer, his voice a blade of condemnation. "Your kind thrives on destruction." Daniel Hayes smirked faintly, nodding toward alien observers, feeding their certainty. Lyra Vay's lavender glow pulsed, a hidden signal of dissent, while her sorrowful eyes tracked each false image. Outside, fleets tightened their orbits, their lights blinking like distant thunderheads. The narrator spoke of the chamber becoming a theater of manipulation, each projection a weapon. Ethan Ward's voice cut through. "History can be bent, but truth survives." Judge Richard's silver scales flashed, dismissing him. The whisper coiled again. "Expose the lies, they fracture under light." The tribunal chamber quivered as new holograms flared, fabricated images of atrocities that never were. Ethan Ward's jaw tightened, fury simmering beneath restraint. Judge Richard's silver scales rippled with disdain as he turned toward the alien audience. Daniel Hayes moved closer to the dais, his polished uniform catching starlight, his smirk betraying satisfaction. Lyra Vay's luminous lavender glow dimmed further, her fingers twitching as if resisting impulse to intervene. Outside, fleets hovered like vultures circling prey. The narrator described the chamber as a crucible of falsehood, where power sculpted lies into weapons. Ethan Ward's voice was steady yet sharp. "You twist shadows into monsters and call it proof." Judge Richard's reply was cold as vacuum. "The galaxy sees what must be seen." The whisper slithered in. "Patience. Their web unravels." The holograms dissolved, replaced by live feeds of alien delegates, reacting with contempt. Ethan Ward felt the pressure mount, a galaxy's judgment crushing him like gravity. Judge Richard's towering figure radiated inevitability, silver scales catching stray light like shards of mirrors. Daniel Hayes' calculating eyes swept the chamber, gauging support for humanity's erasure. Lyra Vay's luminous skin flickered, a fragile spark of rebellion in a room of cold certainties. Outside, fleets shifted again, their lights blinking in silent coordination. The narrator spoke of truth struggling to surface beneath oceans of manipulation. Ethan Ward lifted his chin, voice unwavering. "You fear what you don't understand." Judge Richard's voice was thunder. "We act because we understand too well." The whisper's tone was urgent. "Strike with words. They pierce deeper than blades." The tribunal's walls vibrated faintly, resonating with the hum of alien fleets outside. Ethan Ward's chains rattled as he stepped forward, the sound echoing like a dare. Judge Richard loomed, his silver scales shimmering with restrained fury. Daniel Hayes straightened his polished uniform, his smirk thin but confident, convinced the galaxy had already chosen its verdict. Lyra Vay's luminous lavender glow brightened unexpectedly, a quiet rebellion blooming within her sorrow. The narrator described how the chamber, once a monument to authority, now felt like a stage where fear and defiance danced dangerously close. Outside, the fractured planet's scars glinted under distant suns, a silent witness to history's manipulation. Ethan Ward's voice cut through the heavy air. "Your silence won't save you when truth shatters your lies." Judge Richard's reply cracked like ice. "Then speak and be crushed." The whisper coiled again. The storm begins. The tribunal chamber reconfigured itself, walls sliding apart to reveal an arena of shifting platforms, bathed in pale starlight. Ethan Ward's chains were removed only to bind him in a harsher way, a trial by ordeal designed to humiliate and destroy. Judge Richard's silver-scaled robes fluttered like the wings of a predator as he announced the challenge. Daniel Hayes watched with a thin smile, his polished uniform catching the cold light of alien machinery. Lyra Vay's luminous glow dimmed, her sorrow deepening as she whispered a silent prayer no one could hear. Outside the dome, alien fleets tightened formation, their ships glinting like razors under distant suns. The narrator described the arena's platforms twisting and spinning, a deadly dance of gravity wells and traps. Ethan Ward steadied his breath, his body aching, his mind refusing surrender. "Endurance is all I have left," he thought aloud, voice sharp against the void. Judge Richard replied with contempt, "Then let endurance be your undoing." The whisper curled through the air again. "Survive, and truth will surface." The arena platforms spun faster, their edges flickering with unstable gravity fields that bent light like liquid glass. Ethan Ward leapt to a narrow ledge, muscles burning as invisible forces tugged at him. Judge Richard's silver-scaled form hovered above, a silent sentinel of judgment. Daniel Hayes' smirk widened, confident that exhaustion would claim Ethan Ward. Lyra Vay's lavender glow flickered with anxious energy, her sorrow transforming into a quiet resolve she dared not reveal. Outside, alien fleets tightened their formation, their ships' lights flashing warnings across the void. The narrator described the air growing thin and sharp, each breath a battle, each heartbeat a gamble. Ethan Ward's voice rasped, "You built this to break me, but you've only shown your fear." Judge Richard's voice cut back, cold and sure. "Fear has no place here, only justice." The whisper slithered unseen. "Justice bends beneath truth. Keep moving." The shifting platforms ground to a halt, leaving Ethan Ward stranded on a lone trembling ledge suspended above the void. Judge Richard's silver-scaled robes whipped in the turbulent air, his authority echoing in the chamber's trembling walls. Daniel Hayes stood at the edge of the dais, his polished uniform stiff, lips curved in a cruel half-smile that masked unease. Lyra Vay's lavender glow brightened suddenly, a silent protest shimmering like a beacon among shadows. Outside the dome, alien fleets hovered, their formations breaking ever so slightly, doubt fracturing their unity. The narrator described how fear's iron grip loosened, replaced by the first fragile spark of rebellion. Ethan Ward raised his head, voice steady despite exhaustion. "You will not erase the will to endure." Judge Richard's reply thundered back, "Endurance crumbles before order." The whisper slipped quietly, "Order fractures before truth." The tribunal arena shuddered as gravity fields fluctuated, tilting platforms and scattering sparks. Ethan Ward balanced carefully, his breath steady despite fatigue gnawing at his limbs. Judge Richard's towering form swayed slightly, silver scales flashing beneath the erratic light. Daniel Hayes' smirk faltered as murmurs of unrest spread through alien observers. Lyra Vay's lavender glow flared, her silent defiance now a blazing signal. Outside, alien fleets shifted uneasily, formations slipping apart under growing doubt. The narrator described the moment as the tipping point, where power trembled before conviction. Ethan Ward's voice rang out, "Your power breaks under the weight of truth." Judge Richard replied sharply, "Truth bends to those who hold order." The whisper hissed softly, "Order is slipping away." The chamber's energy shields flickered, casting shadows that danced like ghosts across shattered walls. Ethan Ward stepped forward onto stable ground, chains scraping sparks from the floor. Judge Richard's silver-scaled form stiffened, the veneer of absolute control cracking under visible strain. Daniel Hayes took an involuntary step back, fear leaking into his polished facade. Lyra Vay's lavender glow softened yet pulsed with quiet strength, her presence an unspoken promise of change. Outside, alien fleets exchanged uneasy signals, their perfect choreography unraveling. The narrator described how a galaxy began to wake, shaken from the dream of unchallenged power. Ethan Ward's voice carried clear, "You can cage a body, but not a truth." Judge Richard's reply wavered, "The galaxy will decide." The whisper coiled gently, "The galaxy already has." The tribunal chamber pulsed with a storm of whispers as Ethan Ward's bloodied form stood at the center, chains biting into raw skin. Judge Richard's towering shadow swept across the dome, a figure of inevitable judgment. Daniel Hayes stepped forward, smirk sharpened into a cruel edge, signaling that humanity's end was near. Lyra Vay's lavender glow flickered, her sorrow melting into fierce determination. Outside, alien fleets adjusted their formations, their running lights flashing like distant lightning. The narrator described how tension thickened, as though the galaxy itself held its breath. Ethan Ward raised his head, pain etched into every line of his scarred face. "Your fear exposes your weakness," Ethan Ward said, voice ragged but unbroken. Judge Richard's reply was a rumble that shook the air. "Weakness has no place in the galaxy's order." The whisper slipped between heartbeats. "Speak louder, they are listening now." The chamber lights dimmed, leaving the arena bathed in icy blue. Ethan Ward's chains rattled as he stepped forward, his defiance a spark in a sea of silence. Judge Richard's silver scales shimmered with restrained fury, every movement deliberate and precise. Daniel Hayes' confident smirk faltered for a moment as murmurs of doubt rippled through the alien observers. Lyra Vay's luminous glow brightened, her quiet rebellion stirring beneath sorrowful eyes. Outside, fleets hovered, their lights forming a halo of cold fire around the tribunal. The narrator described the weight of 1 billion gazes pressing down, a galaxy torn between vengeance and truth. Ethan Ward's voice carried, low but steady, "We endure, even when the stars themselves turn against us." Judge Richard's tone cracked like ice, "Endurance will not save you." The whisper slid in, "It already has, keep speaking." The tribunal chamber trembled as alien murmurs rose like distant thunder. Ethan Ward's breath came shallow but unyielding, each inhale a refusal to submit. Judge Richard's silver-scaled form loomed closer, his presence like a collapsing star pressing in on all who watched. Daniel Hayes' confident smirk returned, though a flicker of uncertainty darted across his eyes. Lyra Vay's lavender glow pulsed brightly, a silent promise that resistance still lived. Outside, fleets adjusted, their lights pulsing in anxious rhythm. The narrator described how the chamber became an echo chamber of doubt and fury, every heartbeat a drum of rebellion. Ethan Ward's voice cut through, "Your verdict means nothing if built on lies." Judge Richard replied coldly, "The galaxy accepts only truth." The whisper curled again, "Then make them see the truth they fear." The arena's platforms ground to a halt, silence sweeping over the chamber like a sudden eclipse. Ethan Ward's chains dragged across the floor as he stepped forward, the sound echoing like a warning. Judge Richard's gaze burned with cold authority, silver scales catching the faintest flicker of light. Daniel Hayes's composure wavered as whispers of doubt grew louder among alien spectators. Lyra Vay's luminous lavender glow brightened, her sorrow hardening into quiet defiance. Outside, alien fleets shifted uneasily, their lights flickering like distant storms. The narrator spoke of the turning tide, the moment when oppression faltered before conviction. Ethan Ward's voice rang clear. Humanity's strength is not conquest. It's the fire that survives ruin. Judge Richard's reply was sharp as steel. That fire will be extinguished. The whisper hissed. The fire spreads. The tribunal chamber's air vibrated with the weight of unspoken truths. Ethan Ward stood tall despite blood and exhaustion, his chains rattling like distant thunder. Judge Richard's imposing form froze, the silver scales on his skin shimmering as doubt flickered beneath his authority. Daniel Hayes' confident mask cracked, a shadow of fear crossing his features. Lyra Vay's lavender glow blazed bright, a beacon against the encroaching darkness. Outside, fleets hesitated, their formation fracturing like a brittle shell. The narrator described the moment as the spark before the inferno, when silence becomes the loudest sound in the galaxy. Ethan Ward's voice thundered, "We are not begging, we are declaring our right to exist." Judge Richard's response wavered for the first time. "The galaxy will decide." The whisper wrapped around them all. "The galaxy already has." The tribunal chamber shook with unrest as alien factions erupted into chaos, their ships outside weaving in panicked orbits. Ethan Ward stood in the center, chains hanging broken at his feet, his bloodied body swaying but unbowed. Judge Richard's silver-scaled robes flickered under failing lights as he slammed his staff to restore order. Daniel Hayes stumbled back, his polished uniform wrinkled, fear finally cracking his once perfect mask. Lyra Vay's lavender glow brightened, her sorrow hardening into determination. Outside the transparent dome, alien fleets fired warning shots, streaks of light cutting across the void like cosmic lightning. The narrator described how the galaxy's unity fractured under the weight of exposed lies. Ethan Ward raised his head, his voice steady and cutting. "The truth you tried to bury now devours your power." Judge Richard's voice wavered for the first time. "The galaxy will not bow to chaos." The whisper coiled again. "Chaos is already here." The tribunal's walls groaned as gravity fields faltered, trembling under the weight of panic. Ethan Ward steadied himself, eyes burning like twin stars through exhaustion. Judge Richard's silver-scaled form wavered, the illusion of absolute control cracking under pressure. Daniel Hayes glanced toward alien observers, searching for support, but finding only suspicion. Lyra Vay's lavender glow pulsed brighter, her defiance no longer hidden as she stepped closer to Ethan Ward. Outside the dome, alien fleets broke formation, their ships circling unpredictably, streaks of light carving wild paths across the void. The narrator described the chamber as a collapsing stage where fear unmasked truth. Ethan Ward's voice rang clear. "Your unity was built on deception, and it crumbles now." Judge Richard's tone faltered, quieter than before. "The galaxy will restore order." The whisper slithered. Order has already slipped through their fingers. The chamber floor cracked as stray energy surges rippled through the tribunal, sparks dancing across the alien steel. Ethan Ward stood firm, his bloodied figure framed by chaos. Judge Richard's silver-scaled robes whipped violently in the destabilized air, his composure slipping further. Daniel Hayes backed away, his polished uniform dulled by debris and doubt. Lyra Vay's lavender glow flared bright, her presence now an open challenge to the tribunal's authority. Outside, fleets clashed in sudden skirmishes, beams of light slicing the darkness like shattered glass. The narrator described a galaxy spinning towards civil war, all eyes on a single defiant human. Ethan Ward's voice cut through the din. "You tried to silence us, now your fear is louder." Judge Richard's reply cracked. "You will not shatter the order." The whisper rapped the words. "The order is already broken." The tribunal's ceiling cracked, shards of alien glass drifting like frozen rain. Ethan Ward's breath misted in the chill as the air thinned, yet his gaze stayed fixed on Judge Richard. Judge Richard's silver scales dimmed, his voice faltering beneath the weight of disarray. Daniel Hayes stumbled over broken tiles, panic flashing in his once steady eyes. Lyra Vay's lavender glow shimmered fiercely, her defiance illuminating the crumbling chamber. Outside, alien fleets broke ranks entirely, their movements chaotic, signals jammed. The narrator spoke of a galaxy awakening to manipulation, and of fear losing its grip. Ethan Ward's voice carried like thunder. "You cannot command what you do not understand." Judge Richard's tone cracked. "The galaxy will not forgive this." The whisper slid through. "Forgiveness is no longer theirs to give." The tribunal chamber convulsed as power conduits failed, plunging sections into darkness. Ethan Ward stood illuminated by stray sparks, his defiance a beacon amid ruin. Judge Richard's silver-scaled form trembled, his once absolute authority eroding. Daniel Hayes collapsed against a railing, terror replacing ambition. Lyra Vay's lavender glow burned bright, casting shadows that danced across shattered walls. Outside, alien fleets fired upon each other, a civil war ignited under billions of watching eyes. The narrator described the galaxy holding its breath as old orders crumbled. Ethan Ward's voice rang clear. "You cannot erase what you fear. You only prove its strength." Judge Richard's whisper-soft reply was almost broken. "The galaxy will remember this day." The unseen whisper spoke last. "The galaxy already has." The tribunal chamber stood in ruins, flickering lights revealing shattered walls and fractured floors. Ethan Ward walked forward through debris, each step echoing like a drumbeat against silence. Judge Richard remained rigid, silver-scaled form trembling beneath the weight of doubt. Daniel Hayes clutched a railing, his polished uniform torn, fear replacing arrogance. Lyra Vay's lavender glow illuminated the destruction, her expression a fragile blend of sorrow and hope. Outside the dome, alien fleets hovered, hesitant and fractured, their lights flickering like distant storms. The narrator described the galaxy's gaze, fixed on a single man whose defiance had outshouted judgment. Ethan Ward's voice cut through the silence. "The loudest sound in this galaxy is not your verdict, it is our defiance." Judge Richard's voice faltered. "The galaxy listens and trembles." The whisper drifted softly. "They wanted silence. Now they will remember your roar." The fractured dome revealed distant stars swirling like watchful eyes. Ethan Ward stopped at the center, surrounded by broken chains, their metallic clinks fading into eternity. Judge Richard lowered his gaze, silver scales dull beneath the cold light. Daniel Hayes stepped back, his breath shallow, his confidence shattered. Lyra Vay's lavender glow flared brighter, casting soft light over the devastation. Outside, alien fleets hung motionless, caught between war and uneasy peace. The narrator spoke of a galaxy suspended between vengeance and awakening, listening to a human voice. Ethan Ward's words resonated. "We endure because we must, because hope survives where power fails." Judge Richard whispered, barely audible, "Perhaps the galaxy needs hope." The unseen whisper wrapped around them all. They sought silence and found a warning. The tribunal's shattered walls opened to the void, distant stars gleaming through jagged edges. Ethan Ward stepped forward, every movement steady despite blood and exhaustion. Judge Richard's towering frame seemed smaller now, silver scales dulled by uncertainty. Daniel Hayes leaned heavily against a broken pillar, fear etched deeply into his once confident features. Lyra Vay's lavender glow pulsed warmly, a beacon amid the ruins. Outside, alien fleets drifted apart, their once perfect formations dissolving. The narrator described the galaxy's collective hesitation, the first seeds of change taking root. Ethan Ward's voice rang out. Your fear tried to drown us, but it taught us to swim. Judge Richard whispered, "The verdict is unraveling." The unseen whisper murmured, "The tide has turned." The air was thin, carrying the weight of 1 billion unseen witnesses. Ethan Ward stood tall, chains discarded like forgotten history at his feet. Judge Richard's gaze wavered, silver scales reflecting the flicker of hope now infecting the chamber. Daniel Hayes sank to one knee, his polished uniform soiled, shame burning through fear. Lyra Vay's lavender glow brightened, her quiet defiance blooming into strength. Outside, alien fleets dimmed their lights, their aggression cooling like dying embers. The narrator described how power shifted, subtle yet unstoppable, like tectonic plates beneath stars. Ethan Ward spoke with calm finality. "You wanted silence, but we are the roar that follows." Judge Richard whispered almost reverently, "Perhaps the roar is deserved." The whisper lingered, a warning they will never forget. The tribunal chamber fell silent, the galaxy holding its breath. Ethan Ward turned away from the ruins, his shadow stretching across broken stones toward the stars. Judge Richard remained frozen, silver scales glinting faintly as the weight of history pressed upon him. Daniel Hayes lowered his head, silent tears tracing the edges of his worn face. Lyra Vay's lavender glow softened, a gentle light marking the dawn of something fragile yet powerful. Outside, alien fleets scattered, their paths uncertain, the old order shattered. The narrator described Ethan Ward walking into the starlit void, scarred but unbroken, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. His voice carried like prophecy. They wanted a verdict. What they got was a warning. The whisper faded, final and complete. The loudest sound will echo for ages.